Hey everyone, in this video we want to focus on converting unstructured data such as what you have perhaps in a set of receipt or notes or handwritten notes or a set of tag tables or web pages here and there where the traditional method perhaps is use OCR to read PDF or image or scrape the web pages that you have, and based on the HTML logic behind it, you need some sort of manual help perhaps or some sort of logic to convert it to the final structure that you want. Our alternative here is actually AI and Gemini API in this case, that actually perhaps we can use some smart APIs and prompts and do what we used to do perhaps with a little bit more difficulty in a neater way here. Again, the traditional method can be useful in its own way and context, but in this example, I think there are some values to see how we can use this method and convert to the final structure that we want. So let's have a look at the data and the code and the project itself to see what do we have. So the set of libraries that we use, again, actually are pretty simple. The two main ones is this one that loads the image of the unstructured data. In this example, I have a set of image from receipts that I have, and I want to, in different category, get the total amount and put it in a table. In they're relatively simple, but something that you can easily scale it to the your use case. So this we use to um, get the image and provide it to the API. The API and the platform and the client for that is this one. So you need to install it in your environment, and then we load the API key from Gemini, which I'm going to show you how to get that from a .env file in your environment. You will load it using this library. We load it here and we provide it to the client for Gemini. And then we use this client object to feed it with a prompt in further down the code. And the rest of it is pretty simple. It's the prompt reading the image, which I'm going to show you step by step. But before that, let's have a look at how to get this API. The first step for those of us, perhaps, that is the first time we want to use the API. This use case is using the free tier API that is available in Gemini. That's the example you have, but the use case is pretty extendable to whatever AI model you may have in your case. It's just that the platform that you want to provide the prompt and the way that you create the clients is different for different cases. But let's focus on Gemini. It's pretty common and one of the frequently used items. So if we go back and look at the place where the AI Studio for Google, where we can find the Gemini API is here. So you need to go to aistudio.google.com, go to dashboard, and if you don't have any default project, you need to create the API key, and that API key so you need to put a name for the API key and create a project. You justify it at default Gemini project, and once you do that, there is a item that's created for you. There's one row, and if you click on the key, you see a set of a string. You copy that. That is your Gemini API. Once you have copied that, then we go back to see where to place it. Okay, going back to the code now. This is the .env file. So I just create a file .env in the same environment that I have my code, and you just need one line. That's the item that we want to read it in the code itself. In here, just copy the string that you have, and then we go back to the code itself. Okay, so let's run this, and we have all the libraries. We have the API and create the client object. So this is the main function that we define, and the input of this function is the image that we have coming from the image path that you may have. In this example, I have actually three um, photo from three receipt, and this is the prompt that we have, right? So the prompt should be clear: what is input, what is output, what is the ask, and as you can see, the main thing that I want to focus once you have your prompt, um, then you need your prompt should go, this is the main function. And the one thing that I want to highlight here is the config setting. So response MIME type specify what is the final format of the output that you want to get from the API. Okay, and you have a couple of choices. If you search around, you can get it in text or in different structure in the text. Application JSON give you in a JSON structure format. So this is the best thing that perhaps for this use case you can use, and we're gonna provide the image and the prompt as the content. This gives us that I want to have a JSON structure, and this is the one that's actually a good point to highlight that once you have create your API, you can go to the AI Studio in Google and see different models that is there. You can search around a little bit. Some information is available there in terms of use cases for each model, but also you have in any tier, especially in free tier, obviously you have a limit on how much you can use in perhaps in monthly or what you have there. So use the model that is works for your use case. I think this is what the model I have here. Also, the model that you have still a limit to call that. And there is some available vacant limit for you. So that's something that you can change based on your use case, and obviously throughout the time you have newer models as well. So that is the prompt that we have. We analyze the image, we get the, and here I actually specify what I have in the image. You can obviously change it based on what you have. And this is the fields that I want to extract, right? The main thing is total amount, but the total amount for what? So each receipt comes from different store names, and I also want AI to infer the category of where this payment comes from, or is it a grocery, take, restaurant, whatever. Right? You can specify actually what category you want, and if it's not clear, then put it in other, something like that. And then we obviously, if we couldn't find or there is an error, then we need to see what is the error, but it shouldn't be the case. It's relatively simple um, logic. So next, let's actually do a little test to see what's going on. So this is the first time I call the extract data from image, and I'm gonna call read my the first image that I have, and I see what it gets. So interesting. So it exactly tells me what I wanted. It is a grocery. The total amount is this amount, and this is fresh mark. So if I go now, see what was the image, we can check whether that's correct or not. So going back quickly to here, that is the image receipt grocery, the total amount, and the category, and there is no date as well. So everything was correct the way that we expected. So that's a good test. Let's go back to the code. The next step, we want to do a batch work, do a batch process. So that means read all the image from the path that you have, and then one by one. This is an example of reading them one by one. I also give you an example of where you can have a batch job, where you can have an API call for all the image or multiple image. In this example, we're gonna have an API call for each image separately. For each image we read it, we insert it to the function that we just went through. The output is the JSON result, such as this. Remember that response MIME application JSON is actually the reason we're going to get this output from API. We don't want it to have the uncertainty of what the AI gives us, right? So we want to put it in a structure, and JSON is the best. And I already specify also what should be the different elements in the structure in JSON as well. So we read it, we convert it to a dictionary, and then the output of this would be all data. And one thing you want to do is obviously also the time for any API call, there is rate limit. You can do a little bit research. What's the appropriate amount? Here I put 2 seconds. You can change it depending on the use case. So we have some reasonable um, uh, observing of the API limit. So if I now run this, which I just did. In this case, I have three images. I just got the total amount for each of them, just as a quick summary. The final result is a list where each element is a dictionary, the JSON result in all data. So if you look at quickly the all data, that is what you expect to get. This is each of them is the output that you get from each API call. And that's exactly what I have in the three receipt that I had. And again, I had this limit, this time stop for observing, respecting the API rate limit. Now, one thing which is optional step next is, let's say if you want to actually, instead of um, converting and calling API separately one time for each image separately, maybe we can do a batch job and provide multiple receipts to the image. Each image, again, we want to get this information and we want to get this information separately, but at the end, we want to combine it and return a JSON array that have the information for all image. Or instead, so that would be the multimodal Gemini, the AI that we have that essentially reads it, and that would we count it as one call, right? So this is again same thing as before. The only thing in this case is that the prompt is different, and obviously I just change um, the the input, the images. Instead of one image, I have the path for all the images as the one of the content for the response client that we feed it into the API, right? API, and then you can call it and see what would be the result. So the only one the key point that I want to highlight is that it's not necessarily always a batch work, and calling multiple jobs and image per one call is the best thing to do, because you run a chance of getting perhaps inaccurate result from the AI as well. Roughly speaking, obviously you can make the work scalable and do this as a batch job. The second function that will show you based on the different prompt that you have. But that batching makes sense when your image are perhaps small or similar, it's less complex. Maybe you have 3 to 5 image max, but that's a number you can play around and see what makes sense for you. But if you make the batch more complex, you run the chance of getting just inaccurate result, and you need to do it again. So one thing you can do, maybe you can start with small batches. At the end, you need a little bit of QA, just manual checkup to see if there's any error. Then you need to do those images individually. But that's something that you already have the two function here. You can customize it based on your own need and see what makes sense for you. Okay, lastly, I convert the all data, the list of the dictionary items to JSON items to data frame, and I just convert it to the table that I want. So in this case, that would be the data frame, and there you go. That is my nice, neat, final structured data that I want. Hopefully that has been useful for you. See you in next video.